Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. I move too much. This is all my hope and peace, nothing but the blood of Jesus. This is all my righteousness, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Page 249. Verses 1 and 4 again. I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Thank y'all.
All right, I'm going to Brother Dave Turner. We have this really nice Bible up here. It's been here for a week now, and I looked at it the other day, and it doesn't have anybody's name in it. And, I thought I could leave it for a week, and if nobody claimed it, I might just claim it myself. It's really nice. Anybody know whose Bible that is? Somebody's probably missing their Bible. It's, like I said, it's really... Who? Okay. I mean, it doesn't have anything in it that identifies it, but I mean, and the name page is blank, but it's a really nice, very nice leather Bible. So anyway, I'm going to put it back right there, and if somebody wants to claim it, it's right there to be claimed. So y'all remember all the years that Brother Dave Turner would come through here, and the very first thing he opened with is, he would say is, the guy's like Leroy something, I don't remember what the guy's name was, is before I get started, is Leroy Black here? And everybody'd look around like, who's Leroy Black? And he said, okay, well, I just want to make sure. I've always said if I ever found him, I'd give him his Bible back. But so anyway, I don't know whose it is, but it's a really nice Bible, and somebody's probably missing it. So thank y'all for being here tonight. If you've got your Bible, go ahead and turn over to the book of Genesis. We've been doing a study in the book of Genesis in my Sunday school for several weeks now. We're getting close to the end. And as I had been praying about tonight's service, the Lord led me back to some of the things that we've been studying in the past 3 to 4 weeks in Genesis. And we're going to be in Genesis chapter 41. And most of you are very familiar with the story that's contained in this section of Genesis. And we're going to read over just a little bit of this, and I'm going to bring out 3 points that I think the Lord would have us to understand tonight. So before we get started, let's pray, and then we'll get into the message. So, God, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. Looking forward to getting into your word and understanding more about you and who you are, and God, who you've called us to be. And Lord, I pray that as we open your word tonight, that you will allow the Holy Spirit to work in our heart and allow us to understand how important serving you is and the ways that we can serve you. God, I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So if you've got your place in Genesis chapter 41, if you'll look down to verse 46, I'm going to read the first part of Genesis chapter 41, 46. It says, "And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt." So what's taking place right here is, if you'll remember, Pharaoh had dreamed a couple of dreams. And he wasn't sure what the dreams meant. You know, he woke up in the middle of the night. He was disturbed by his dreams. He called all the wise men and the magicians in, and he said, "Hey, what does this mean?" He wanted an interpretation of his dreams. And none of the Egyptian wise men, none of the people that were there in the group of magicians could help him understand what the dreams meant. And so he had heard about this guy that was in prison, and this guy's name was Joseph. And if you'll remember, Joseph was imprisoned probably unjustly. Today we would say he was set up. He was framed, right? And so Joseph was in prison because Potiphar put him there, because Potiphar's wife took a liking to Joseph, and it wasn't reciprocated, and she was pretty upset about it, and basically made like Joseph had forced himself upon her, when in reality he had not. And so Joseph had been in prison for a while now, and there were a couple of guys that he ran across while he was in prison. Remember the story of the baker and the butler? So they were in prison, and they dreamed some dreams, and Joseph gave them the interpretation of their dreams. And the interpretation actually came to pass. So after that, one of them was asked to remember Joseph once you're back before the king, or back before Pharaoh. And so, you know, as we are, we're often forgetful people, right? I know I am. And so this guy gets back in the presence of Pharaoh, and he forgets all about the promise that he made to Joseph. And so, but all of a sudden, one day, he hears about Pharaoh's dreams. He's like, "Oh yeah, Joseph. I had forgotten about him. But hey, Pharaoh, there's this guy in prison that I know can interpret dreams." And so Pharaoh calls for Joseph, and Pharaoh describes his dreams to Joseph. And then Joseph provided him the interpretation of the dreams. And basically Joseph said, the two dreams are one. There's going to be 7 years of plenty. There's going to be 7 years where the land is going to bring forth abundantly. And there's going to be so much that we're going to need to store it up. Because right behind that are going to be 7 years of famine and dearth in the land, such as has never been seen before. And it's going to consume all of the plenty that had taken place in the years before. And so, so Pharaoh appreciates this and appoints Joseph over the process of taking care of the land in the 7 years of plenty. And so if you've got your place there in Genesis 41, verse 46, I'm going to read the second half of that verse. And it says, "And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt." And I think, number one of the things that God would have us understand is that Joseph made preparation for what he believed was about to take place. Joseph made preparation for what he believed was about to take place. And it wasn't just that he believed it, but God had shown it to him. God had given him insight into what was about to take place, not only in the land of Egypt, but in those surrounding areas. All the land was going to be impacted by the 7 years that were about to take place in plenty, but then the entire area was going to be impacted by the dearth in the second 7 years. But Joseph was making preparation for what was about to take place. He had to put people in positions. Pharaoh has said, hey, listen, I want you to be over this entire process. There's going to be nobody in the land of Egypt more powerful that has more authority other than myself than you in this whole place. You're going to basically be the number two. You're going to be the chief operating officer for the entire nation of Egypt. And whatever you say goes. And so there's going to be a lot of responsibility. And so Joseph is going to have to put an infrastructure in place to store up all this corn, all these things that will be brought into the storehouses during the time of plenty. So Joseph was making preparation for what God had revealed to him was going to take place. I think in our lives, we have to do the same thing. I think we have to make preparation for times of plenty. But number two, look at Genesis chapter 41, verses 48 and 49. In verse 48, the Bible says, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up food in the cities, and the food of the field which was round about every city laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. So Joseph, during this period of time, there was so much corn that it was as the sand of the sea. Can you imagine that much corn? I joke with my Sunday school class, I hate corn. Like, I just despise corn. Like, about the only way I'll eat corn is like cornbread. Like, kernels of corn, just can't cut it. Y'all like corn? Anybody else in here like me that doesn't like corn? Is there anybody else in the room that doesn't like corn? Are y'all serious? Like, not a single person? What about online? Anybody online that doesn't like corn? I mean, I feel like I'm being singled out here. But no, corn to me is just nasty. But obviously, if corn was the only thing left, I would be eating corn. No doubt about it. If my survival depended upon it, and that's what God was providing, I'd be eating a lot of corn. So the second thing is, Joseph maximized the potential while time was in his favor. So during that 7 years of plenty, Joseph put this infrastructure together and maximized the time that he had available. He knew he had 7 years, but he knew that 7 years, he would have to use that entire 7 years to store up enough grain to last through the 7 years of famine. So he didn't say, you know what, we've got 7 years. There's no rush. Let's just kind of relax. We'll take it easy these first couple of years, and then we'll make it up in the last 5. Or he didn't say, it's no big deal. Let's wait 3 or 4 years, and we'll make it up in the last 2 or 3. No, he didn't do that. Time was of the essence. And it was important to take advantage of that entire 7 years. So Joseph maximized that potential. He took advantage of all the time that he had available because it was important. Why was it important? Because there was not going to be another source of food. He was going to be in a situation where people were going to live or die based on his ability to get the whole entire nation of Egypt going in the same direction. Now, do you think everybody brought their food into the storehouses, their crop, their corn, into the storehouses? I mean, human nature would be to hold some back, right? But it says that it was coming in as the sand of the sea. So Joseph had to encourage everybody in the nation of Egypt to do the right thing and bring the crop in. So, number one, Joseph made preparation for what he believed was about to take place. Number two, Joseph maximized the potential while time was in his favor. And number three, Genesis chapter 41, verses 54 through 57. Read along with me. It says, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands. But in the land of Egypt there was bread. And when excuse me, and when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried unto Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. Verse 57. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because the famine was so sore in all lands. So, not only was it impacting Egypt, not only was Joseph's preparation allowing for the survival of the Egyptians, but it also allowed them to sell corn unto those that were their neighbors, those that were around them. So the third thing here, Joseph ensured that Egypt was positioned perfectly for the time when those around them wanted what they had to offer. You know what? There are times in our lives, because of our testimonies, because of the things that God has blessed us with, that if we're living right and we're walking as a Christian, others around us want what we have. And I'm not talking about our material possessions. I'm not talking about our cars or houses. I'm talking about they want a relationship with God like we have. And so we have to take advantage of situations where, much like Joseph here, he put Egypt in a position to where everybody around them wanted something that they had. You know what? There were things that were probably extremely valuable before this that didn't mean a thing when you can't get food, right? Do gold earrings matter? Do silver chains matter? Diamond rings? If you can't put food on the table, those things are worthless. And so society, I'm sure, had deteriorated at that point where the entire focus was on food. So I think as a part of our ministry, we need to put ourselves in a position where others around us want what we have. So, I think we have a great ministry here. I think obviously there are things that we can improve. There are things that we can do better. But one of the ministries, that I think is extremely important here at Victory Baptist Church is our school ministry. There's, correct me if I'm wrong, 230 kids in the school right now. It's a lot of kids, more than we've ever had. And to whom much is given, much is required, right? So we have a tremendous responsibility with our Christian school. And, with some of the changes that are being proposed that will take place or potentially take place in the coming months or years, I think we need to make sure that, much like Joseph, we're making preparation even now to be prepared for some of those changes. And one of the things is the, school choice or the Price Act. And I don't know if that's going to pass, but I feel pretty certain that it's going to come up in the state legislature. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm just woefully unprepared to even speak intelligently about it. And, I think at some point it's going to be important for our ministry and our school to understand what potential impacts it can have. And, I think we need to begin making preparation even now for what could take place. I think we need to begin understanding, our needs currently while time is in our favor. We have time between now and when the Price Act may pass, and that gives us an opportunity to make sure even now that we have things in place that will be important then. And then the last thing is, I think we need to position our school ministry, perfectly for that time when we have something to offer that those around us want. And, I think this is an amazing moment in the history of our school. I honestly do. And I don't know that the Price Act will have one impact at all to our school, favorably or unfavorably, because I just don't know enough about it and how it will be integrated if it is passed. But I still think it's important for us to learn about it and to try to find out if there are things that we can do now. Excuse me. My voice is terrible today. Can y'all tell? I worked outside all day yesterday. That was a mistake. And to that end, I have asked Walter Kearns, Walter is with the Champion Group, to come give us an idea about some of the aspects of the Price Act or school choice so that we can understand a little bit about it. Now, this is not a new concept, right? This is already passed in several states, and Walter may know how many states, but this is being proposed in the state of Alabama. And, you know, it's one of those things where I think it's important for us to understand because, you know, this is such a critical part of our ministry. And so I think because of that, you know, it's important to learn from subject matter experts. I'll be the first to stand up and say, I am not a subject matter expert when it comes to education. Don't propose to be. Ask me anything about healthcare, and I can probably give you a very intelligent answer. But when it comes to education, I just don't know enough about it to be able to articulate some of the important facts of the implications of the Price Act. So I've asked Walter to come tonight to give us some information about how it could potentially impact our Christian school and some of the things that we might look for or try to understand in this interim period so that we can be better positioned as this comes to pass. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over the rest of the time to Walter. And Walter's got a few slides that he's going to show. And then I would love for you to ask Walter questions. And I'm sure he's like, oh no, the questions. But please feel free to ask questions. I'm sure I'm going to have some questions. So I appreciate if you would. Thank you so much, Walter. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight? I really appreciate y'all taking a little bit of time to let me be here. This actually brings up a lot of old memories for me. My dad's a pastor in Tuscaloosa, and I saw right here on one of these thorough, some of the ladies had gum, and they were passing gum back and forth, and I have a lot of early childhood memories of coming to church and hitting up the nice ladies for gum. So I refrained on this one, but it is very nice to be here with you. My name's Walter Kearns. I work with the Champion Group, and I'll talk about the Champion Group here in just a second and what we do. I grew up in Tuscaloosa. I went to Auburn University. They don't let me back in city limits often. I have 3 adorable kids, twin girls who are 6 and a little man who is 3. That helps me get back in city limits a lot of times. God called me right out of Auburn to go up to Kanakuk Camps. It's the largest Christian sports camp in the country, and they have a seminary program. So I went through that seminary program, thought I was going to come back and make lots of money in business. Back here in Alabama, had a job lined up, and God said, no, I want you to go make more money by being in youth ministry. And so it was a sweet time. I went to Stillwater, Oklahoma, didn't even know where that was. And I was put in charge of a ministry that had about 300, sometimes 350 kids, junior high and high school. And I had about 86 college students who would lead small groups for me to those kids. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to run a business. And that's what it was. It was business. We had budgets. We had everything. I didn't kill anybody for 3 years, so they gave me a promotion. And at that time, I got to start overseeing 8 to 10 chapters a year, all represented about those same numbers. And I got to apply my business degree. And after doing that, after getting married, after having kids, we moved back to Birmingham. So I now live in Birmingham, not too far up the road. I came to work for the Champion Group. And just, I wanted to share, what does the Champion Group do? Why do we exist? We exist to empower Christian schools and ministries to accomplish greater impact through increased funding and organizational effectiveness. There were times when I worked at that youth ministry where our board meeting consisted of the board saying, Walter, I'm not sure where we're going to find money to pay you this month, but if we can't find it, then you can stay at our house. And that meant a lot. And I still keep in touch with a lot of my board members. I love them. I kept saying, there's got to be a better way. This is not I love your analogy, your message to us tonight, Shannon, because we were not in a season of famine, but we had not prepared well, so therefore we were, even though we shouldn't have been. And so getting to come to work for a company who helps Christian schools do that has been a huge pleasure. And there's sometimes in life where you get a job and you go, I didn't even know to ask for this. This is that great. And so that's how I feel about our company. Our entire team, we have about 19 employees. Everybody has either worked in Christian education or in Christian ministries. So we feel like this is our ministry now. Just to give kind of an idea of how we look at a Christian school, these pillars of success, there's 7, and that's pretty small. So I'm going to name them off for y'all in the back who can't see that. One pillar of success is academics. You're a school. Please, I hope you're looking at academics to see if you're successful. Finance, which I'm also going to say is financial modeling and budgeting and forecasting. Very important for any business. Leadership and HR. How strong is your leadership, hiring, training structure? Your board governance. That's really the foundation for any nonprofit, and especially for a Christian school, is the board of directors and the overseers. Strategic planning. I will not get on this. This is one of the greatest passions of my life. And I'm actually writing a book right now about strategic planning for the Christian mindset. Strategic planning is the framework for making your decisions. Advancement, this is fundraising. This is endowments. These are grants and capital campaigns, major donor development. Then lastly is operations, right? You have to have good operational infrastructure to be able to run a business. And if you notice here, this is like a rope. This graphic, we designed it. Some people who are great at marketing designed that to look like a rope, because each one of those pillars, y'all, it's a strand in the rope. And if you are lacking money, it's very hard to hire good teachers. If you don't have a good structure of a board, it's very hard to write a good strategic plan. Your strategic plan helps you go get more donors, so you can see if one rope is frayed, the rest of the rope is going to be weaker and eventually snap. And so what we do is we come into schools and we do holistic health assessments of each one of those components. Because what matters most is you look in the center there, and it says discipleship-infused education. That's what we're about. That's all we care about. We want to help schools be so financially and operationally effective that your sole focus is discipleship. And I'm not talking about Bible class and chapel once a week. I'm talking about a complete integration of every teacher. And Caleb and I have talked about this now for a couple of years. How could we integrate discipleship into everything, and for a board meeting to consist of questions like, what does the classroom of the future look like? And how can we be preparing our kids? So I'm not going to go into all the details of what we do, and we have consultants for each one of these areas. I'm not getting into that tonight. Really just want to talk about this health assessment and the opportunity that specifically Chilton Christian has. I know all schools in Alabama and other states who are getting this school choice bill passed. I believe that there are 21, soon to be 22 states that have this somewhere in the process of having it approved. Arizona was the first to actually pass it, and so I'll reference them a little bit here in just a minute. But this health assessment that we do looks at those components and helps you understand, how are we ready or not ready to take that opportunity and to sustainably run with it, and to more efficiently and effectively be able to impact your area and be able to take on those students. So I'll get into a few more of those details later, but I want you to understand our framework of our mind as I jump into my points tonight. First of all, there's 3 domains that Christian schools operate in: academic, spiritual, and business. I've already said you're a business. And a lot of businesses look at success as profit margin. So if they look at success as profit margin, I'm going to say schools need to look at success for discipleship margin. And that's what we need to be looking at. So when we go into schools, most schools that we look at are doing well academically. And that's largely due to accreditation. There are standards in place you have to hit to be a school and to be graduating students. It does not mean that there's not room for improvement. There's always room for improvement in everything we do. But academics is probably the least amount of consulting we do. And it's really not an area that we're eager to get into the nuts and bolts. There's a lot smarter people than us for that. Spiritual. Spiritual is an area that we see schools doing pretty good. But in the third domain of business is where we see schools having either the most trouble or not optimally taking advantage of what they could. Because we go into some schools and you go, hey, you're doing all right, but there's a huge margin that you could be doing better. And because there's a gap or inefficiencies in that business domain, guess what suffers? The other 2, especially spiritual. And I won't go into this too much or get on the soapbox. We work with hundreds of schools across the country, and even getting lunch with Caleb, which we've gotten to do multiple times, is hard. Y'all wear so many hats. And so when you have so many hats and you're so busy, how do you know that you're focusing on what matters most? That's what we help schools do, is to optimize the business, the financial, the operational structure, so that you can focus more fully on the 2 domains that really matter most. So here's what I wanted to talk to y'all about tonight, just 3 benefits of our health assessment that I wanted to point out. And the point that I'm really going to stay on the most is this school choice. It is one of the greatest opportunities that has been put in front of Christians, I believe, in a long time. Because I will talk very cordially to any of you as late as you want tonight who want to disagree with me that Christian schools are the second greatest opportunity we have in America to create disciples. First being the church. But even the church pales in comparison to the number of hours that you have during a week to impact a kid's life. So outside of your own home, and that's even debatable with how many things people take on, school is the most consistent and sometimes the greatest amount of time of impact in a child's life from first grade to 12th grade. And so if we can help them run in a greater capacity and have the means to bring on more kids into that structure, it's the whole reason why I've turned down a lot of jobs to stay where I am, because I love it. So school choice. So as Shannon mentioned, right now the Price Act, which is the school choice bill for Alabama, is going before legislature to be voted on. What would this do? If passed, what would it do? It would essentially create a savings account for each one of your kids in the amount of, well, right now, there may be revisions, there may be a lot that happens before it actually gets passed, but currently $6,900 per kid per year. And if I'm correct, that's lower than the total of your current tuition, right? I think that's right. No. Close? Higher? Okay. My 2 kids, my twins, they're in private Christian school. If you looked at me and said, we're going to give you close to $14,000 to help subsidize your kid's tuition, wow, that is powerful. And when we start to think about the implications of that, it would then allow more and more people who want to have that Christian education the ability to do so. Now, I'm going to talk about the dark side of this for a second. We preach as a company that as a whole, there are exceptions. As a whole, you do not take government money. Now, why would you not take government money? More often than not, there's strings attached. Now, what you're seeing through COVID, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, you're seeing a mass exodus or a desire for a mass exodus or just really mad people talking about the curriculum being taught in public schools. And I'm not just critical race theory, but underage reading. And the freedom of some of these teachers to talk about sexuality. And it appalls me when I see that, which is why we can't afford to go to the school that we go to, but we make it work. We make a lot of sacrifices for our kids to be in Christian education. With this Price Act, the current version in place, and I would tell y'all, make sure you have legal advice whether you would accept this. That goes as a given after talking to your board already. I know they would do that. Currently, this does not have strings attached. And in the states that it has been passed, it does not either. And so that would allow you then to be able to have your parents and parents of others in public schools be able to pay for your tuition. Now, there's 3 ways for a school to make more money. Tuition, fundraising, and auxiliary revenue functions, or to generate revenue through logical service extensions. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about fundraising. If you had an influx of, let's just say, 100 students at paying at least, if not more, $6,900, that's huge for your bottom line. That's huge. But that's not really the point. The point is that you now have 100 kids who you now get to have, on average, about 1,500 hours a year of influence for the gospel. Now, when Shannon asked me to come down, I started looking at the Price Act just a little bit more deeply, and I called our founder and our CEO, and our founder lives in Phoenix, so he's actually been seeing, obviously a small data set, but he's been seeing schools who are impacted and now using the school choice from Arizona. And I was telling Shannon before the meeting, the first question they asked was, are they a rural school or are they in a more suburban area? I said, no, I'd say, Chilton is rural. And he goes, oh, great, perfect. I said, why do you say that? And he goes, look, the areas that they are seeing, at least right now, be most affected in a positive way for Christian schools is rural. And what they're forecasting is that will continue to be the same. Doesn't mean that up in Birmingham we won't see benefits from this too. We will. You guys have 14 public schools in your county, if I'm correct. And when I looked at it, there were close to 8,000 students in those schools, just rough numbers. Imagine if 5% of those wanted to go to a Christian school to leave. That's 400 new students. That's well more than doubling your school. That's an amazing opportunity for impact. When I was doing research, and I know this area, growing up in Alabama and being in Birmingham, there's only one other Christian school even close. It's a school startup. I think it's New Life Christian Academy, if I'm not mistaken. And really the only one that is anywhere close that might pull from you guys is Cahaba Christian. Until really you get into Prattville, or you're coming up to Birmingham, or you go across and you're getting close to Cornerstone, which is in Columbiana. You guys are an oasis in a desert of Christian schools. And I will go ahead and tell you, after talking with the board, if you had an influx of 400 students, it would be catastrophic. If you had an influx of 100 students, I mean, if I went to Caleb today, I was like, hey man, we got 100 students, how great is that? He's probably going to cry. Operationally, what would that do? To the infrastructure, what would that do? And so the school choice, the Price Act for Alabama, it is a huge opportunity. And I can't even explain how perfect of an example it is to think about Joseph and preparing for that time. If they weren't prepared, that would have been catastrophic. A lot of people would have lost their lives. So hopefully nobody will lose their lives once this Price Act goes through. I do believe it will go through. I don't believe it's a question of if. I think it's when. I know Mississippi is on the cusp. They're going to be, it already is in front of legislature there as well. And I think the two are going to go pretty quick in tandem from people that I've talked to. That is a huge reason why I believe, and I've talked with the board, that this would be a great time to evaluate the school and say, what do we need to be doing to get ready for that? What do we need to be doing to get ready for that opportunity? The second thing that I wanted to bring before y'all, I'm going to brag on your board. Your board's asking to be evaluated. That's not common. Are we live on the internet right now? All right, I'm not going to use names. Y'all, I've had boards go behind each other's back to contact us because of the dysfunction of the school. Clearly they needed help, but they felt that they had to do that in order to get help. Your board is asking to be evaluated to say, how can we run this school better? Y'all have had a storied history. I got to meet with Caleb and Pastor Jones. What was it, Caleb? How long ago was that? Was that a year and a half?
3 years.
3 years ago? I mean, a lot's happened since then. But I got to hear the story of the school. Not many men would or could have done what Pastor Jones did. You've had a unicorn, and you're about to hire another pastor. You don't find unicorns often. And so to look at the structure of the board, the new pastor, the administration of the school, the infrastructure of the school, that needs to happen in order to move forward with the best that you can do and to accommodate the most people. Because let's just say you have 5% want to come from public school. That school is not going to hold 5%. They're not going to hold 400 students. They won't hold another 100 students in the school. That means new building, possibly new property. That means capital campaigns. That means millions of dollars. And so once you start looking at the domino effects of it, you go, oh man, we need to get ready, which is exactly what your leadership has done and exactly where we had our kind of first conversation together. The last thing I want to talk about here is that pastoral candidate, whoever y'all are going to bring in. Like I said, Pastor Jones was able to be the pastor and virtually run the school. And that is not something that happens often and you still have both running well. It just doesn't happen a lot. So that speaks a lot to his character. I just want you to know that. Secondly, it is going to be tougher to find that person again. And especially someone who has experience doing that, because that doesn't happen often. And so this assessment is used often in order to help you identify who that person needs to be. And if you want to go into the details of what the assessment looks like in order to do that, I'll give you this teaser, and please come talk to me more afterwards or in the questions. We do leadership evaluations with DISC and EQI, with leadership coaches. So we look at the top leadership of the school and of the board, and then we'll also say, we'll write a plan. We'll write a 3 to 5 year plan out of your assessment, and then say, here are the phases that you need to take in order to get to where you want to go. And I'm a football guy. That's like your offense. We're basically writing an offense for you. And what I like to say is you would never put a quarterback who can't throw into a West Coast offense. You're not going to ask a quarterback who can't throw to pass the ball 30 times a game. And so when we look at your plan, depending on what your plan is, we can help you identify what type of leadership do you need in order to get to that plan. Now, that's not all going to be on your new pastor, I don't believe. And it's also not going to be all on the school. You'll have a very fun opportunity because the school is a ministry of the church. And I think that's how you go hand in hand. Our school is a ministry of the church, and it's a beautiful picture. And we're able to help each other in ways that we can more than apart. But it has to be run optimally, or else it can actually trip one another up. And so those are just the three biggest things that I feel that we had talked about. And so I hope that kind of educates you on a little bit of what we do and the opportunity that you have in front of you, specifically here at Chilton Christian. And so if you could just go to the last slide, it's got those 7 pillars up on it. I'd love to stop there. And as Shannon said, please ask questions. And nothing is out of bounds at all. I welcome all questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll go find it out, and I'll shoot it over to Shannon and have it to you. I don't claim to be an expert in everything, but nonprofit management is what I know best. And so what do you got for me? Any questions? Any clarification?
Are you familiar with Robin Mears?
I am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Rob, do you know Robin? Okay.
I happen to be the principal of the school.
Oh, gotcha. Perfect. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No Robin Mears. A little bit, I wouldn't say personally very well. We've gone and been exhibitors at their conference before, and also work with other ACEA and AACS schools. Yeah.
He was very instrumental in the Price Act.
Yes. Yes, he has. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, sir. The private schools or the public schools? Sir?
The public school.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So how does that affect the Price Act? How does that affect the federal government funding?
Yes, sir. So what they're saying now, sorry, I'll step into the mic. What they're saying with the Price Act is that if you chose to go to a public school, to put your kids into a public school, that $6,900 would be put into that public school. Because they have calculated that's the average that it costs for a student.
In essence, basically, that amount will follow the student.
Right.
So whether the student is in a public school or whether the student is in a private school, that $6,900, from my understanding, goes where the student goes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all funded by the state, or is it funded by the federal?
From what I have read, that's mainly coming out of state taxes. Yes, sir. Sorry, say that one. I couldn't hear that.
If the federal government is not approval of that process, they would lose that funding.
I'm not sure. Not sure about that. I can look into that for you. But that's where it has to be very clear of what does the federal government require of the state if they're putting that money towards each kid. That's where you have to be careful of those strings being attached. Yeah. Yeah, back there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What kind of strings do we need to pay attention to? I mean, be looking out for, if it's not politics, is right now it's one thing, and next week the other house or the Senate, they can get their hands.
That's right.
They say, oh, we'll pass it
If, that's right.
add this or do that. So what kind of things would the general public need to be looking for to make sure it don't happen again?
Yes, sir.
If they offer the school $6,900, what kind of strings could they be trying to add to it?
I don't I haven't seen anything saying control of the school. A lot of it would be what you have to implement and what standards you would have to uphold. So, for example, what curriculum you'd have to teach, or what age-appropriate material can you have or should you have in the classroom. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and tell you there are people who are a lot smarter than me who could tell you all the list of it. What I'm going to say is make sure you have a lawyer, and ACEA will help with this. I know that they've already been doing some stuff on educating, and other associations that we work with are helping to educate their schools on what do you need to be looking at to make sure that doesn't happen. Because the amount of things that they could put in for strings, far more than I could ever even speculate. And that's where you'd have to go through each iteration of what was actually passed. I just know that what has been put forward, I have heard the legal counsel that we trust say, hey, yeah, that one would be good. But I don't know what will be passed or if it actually will. Yeah.
Is this for just K-12 schools?
Yes. Yes.
One question, what about the parents who've already put their students in the Christian school?
Mm-hmm.
Will the politicians try to exempt them and say, oh, no, you've already put them in there, so you don't need that money?
No, it would be a phased rollout of how this would apply and who can apply for it. Eventually, I think it would be within 3 years, everyone would fall under the umbrella of being able to apply for this. But no, if they were already there, they would be able to, the parents would be able to apply and use that. Yes?
You said K through 12, is that K-3, 4, and 5? Or is it just K-5?
That's a great question. I don't believe so, but that's not one that I'm going to say confidently yes or no. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is. It is just kindergarten. I knew it was kindergarten, but I didn't know about K-3.
I think they see K-3, K-4 as preschool.
Yeah.
And as a result,
Well, they're concerned about the pre-K initiative they started years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked into that, we did not get involved in that because there were strings attached.
Yeah.
So we were not.
That's a great example. Yeah. What else? Yes, sir.
The case in Arizona, have you seen that there were an influx of new schools? A lot of schools that pop up to meet some of that demand.
Yes, sir, and I don't have any statistics for you on that. I know that we have assisted with 2 startup schools in Arizona, both post-COVID, and both of them utilizing the school aid from their point of view. They both have struggled. They have struggled. It's hard to start a school, very hard, and this does help with that tuition portion of revenue, but it is not enough to say you can just have tuition fully funded. The operations behind that to make sure that tuition fully covers your entire budget is very tough. And if you're only, a lot of associations advise that you have your operational budget covered through tuition. And that's, I would say, a decent practice. That's not bad, but the presupposition there is that you're probably underpaying your teachers against market rate drastically. It's very difficult to pay teachers what they should get, and we'll just use public schools as a comparison at market rate, only taking tuition. So that there has to be other revenue, and that's really what we were kind of talking about with your board of what does that financial infrastructure look like to not just depend on this Price Act. Yes, that would be a means of getting a lot more students or helping your parents be able to fund tuition. I would like to put this out there, and I don't want to be a doomsday or a prepper, but I was talking to one school in Mississippi who's preparing to think about what it would look like if their school choice got passed. And he was sharing with me, is like, even if we get, I think theirs is like 6,200. He said, even if we get that 6,200, what's going to happen to our giving culture, our donor culture, once that happens? Because now parents are going to feel like, well, it's paid for. A lot of parents in Christian schools have no idea that you have what we call a tuition gap. And that's the gap that your operational budget does not account for through tuition. And so I told him, I said, you're going to have a very short window to educate your parents and bring them on board to make sure that they continue giving to the school. Because they're going to feel like they're getting this for free now. And that's not a customer that turns into a raving fan and a longtime donor. So even, that would be a downside almost of school choice, is that because they get this free money, now you're going to have to work harder. Your administration is going to have to work harder to communicate that message. And so that's going to be something you're going to have to focus on. Also, this would be bad doomsday. And I'm not saying this will happen. I don't know enough to predict this. But one thing that we've talked about briefly as a company is what would happen if this was passed and then you utilized it for a year or two and then something happened and it was taken away or strings were attached. That's going to be even harder. So to put a financial infrastructure in place that would make that a moot point, that's what we do. We help schools put that financial infrastructure with those 3 buckets of revenue that I spoke about, so that you can do what you need. And I'll belabor that point really quick. Our founder, Kelly Blake, was a CEO in private equity. He then became a head of school at his kids' Christian school. They were failing. They told him it was going to close in 2 years. They operated at a deficit. After 8 years, he had gone from 300 students to 800 students. And he was paying his teachers at market rate with bonuses. And he was generating over $3.5 million in non-tuition revenue year over year. If Kelly needed to do something, if his school needed to do something, they paid for it. And they did what they needed, not what they could. And so that would be, school choice aside, that's kind of what Shannon and the board have talked to me about wanting to be able to do. Is not just be able to rely on something that is good like a School Choice Act, but take really control of that future of the school to do what you need, not just what you can. Great question. Any others? Yeah, any questions online? Yes, back there.
It doesn't affect me, but you said apply for it. Are there parameters that some people will get it and some people will not?
I don't know that. I don't know. I know that you will have to apply to get it. I don't know if there will be parameters. Does anybody else know if there'll be parameters? Yeah. But they will want to know who's taking it. That's a great question, which I have not researched. I would also say there. Sorry. Right now, no. Okay, great. And we are accredited internationally. You're accredited internationally as well. So I know. Are y'all accredited through AACS? Through Cognia too. Okay. So that I would counsel though that would be another area that if they wanted to put a string in, that'd be an area to look. But right now it's not. It's great. Any others? Or Caleb, is there anything online? If there's no more questions, I'll turn it back over to Shannon. Again, thank y'all for letting me be here. I do just want to take a moment to praise your leadership one more time. Pastor Jones looked at this. I talked to Caleb about this. The board is looking at just what do we need to do to create more disciples. And That's a really good conversation. So please encourage your leadership when you get a chance, because that's really great. So thanks for having me tonight.